Good day, everyone. This is Dr. Juan Aviles Morales, and today I'm going to share with you a topic that may assist some of you amateur genealogists who are looking at documentation about the classes of races in the Spanish colonial period. Today's title of the presentation is The Caste System of Mixed Races in the Spanish Empire. And I will show you a picture, famous painting that was done in the 1700s that chronicled the different mixed racial classes that I'll go into in a moment. Why is this important? First of all, when you are looking at relatives, depending on their mixtures, this will determine what they're listed as. In Puerto Rico, the most common classifications of race are white, negro, which is black, and they didn't really use Native American. There weren't that many at the time, so mestizo, but I will get to that in a moment. So let's proceed. And I want to point out that I list my sources on the bottom over here. This is where I obtain the picture, and each slide is going to have a slice of this painting, and we will go into briefly in some of the categories. All right, first one. What do we get when we mix a Spaniard and a Native American? We get a mestizo. Okay, so it doesn't matter which parent it is. It's just if you're half Spanish and half Native American, you are considered mestizo. And this also holds true for other areas around the world, including the Philippines. And it's generally not only Spanish, but more European and native or indigenous. You also see it in Indonesia, the term. And mestizo was also borrowed and used in the English language and even in German. Okay, examples of listings. This is my own documentation from my great-grandmother, paternal great-grandmother, and it's written in Spanish. This is her birth documentation, and it says right here that I'm going to read it in Spanish and then I'll translate it. Que es dicha hembra que es de raza mestiza. Okay, so that let it be known that this female is who is from the mestizo race, and then they label her name. My great grandmother's name was Francisca Saturnina Ortiz Baez. So very long name, but I actually got to meet her when I was 5 years old in Puerto Rico, and I got to see her, and I never forget because she actually had her leg amputated, and I never seen that before in a person, and that's why that memory is so vivid in my mind. I remember her quite vividly, and in a way I'm glad because now I have a memory that is kept alive, and I have a document that reflects it. Moving along, this is another family member. This is actually from my mother's side. This is her paternal grandmother, great-grandmother, excuse me, paternal great-grandmother, which also shows that she is mestiza. So you see that it's not common to be found, but it can be found, and sometimes the problem is that they will label or mislabel the ethnicity of the individual that's documented, and that's quite common. All right, so what happens when we mix, or should I say, when a mestizo and a Spaniard have a child? What is that child going to be called? It's a castizo. It's castizo. It's almost a high percentage, not almost, but a high percentage of European blood, if you will, and very little indigenous blood. And that's important because we'll see on the next slide. So what happens when a Castizo and a Spaniard have a child? What is that child considered? They're considered a Spaniard. Given that the Castizo is considered to be almost pure, not quite, once they have or have a child with a Spaniard, that child would have the full rights and the full privileges, if you will, of being a full-blooded Spaniard that at that time, according to the socioeconomic status that was imposed with that. Now, what do we get when a Spaniard and an African have a child? What is that child going to be called? Mulato or mulatto. This is a person that's half black and half European, or pretty much, yes, African and European mixture. 50% would result in a mulatto. Here is from my tree. Puerto Rico has 3 distinct ethnic groups in our history. We have Spaniard, we have African, and we have Taino, so, or native indigenous populations of the island. So here is a record of one of my family members who was mulatto or mixed, and that's how it would be found in our documentation. Now, sometimes I have noticed, and I'll share with this in a moment, someone who should have been labeled as a mestizo was labeled as a mulatto, or they were labeled as a European or white, and you see that a lot in the census, but we'll get into that in a moment. All right, what happens when you mix a Spaniard with a mulatto? What is the child going to be? Morisco. Morisco is just a higher percentage of European blood and less of the African blood. Yet, I've never seen in the 16 different races mulatto becoming Spanish, if you will. So here's a pitfall that I've noticed on my own family tree. This is my maternal line. This is my mother, my grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, and then all the way up to my 6th great-grandmother. So these are 8 generations before me. And I did my DNA testing for the mitochondrial DNA, and it was a native haplogroup. So I did my best to trace my maternal line as far as I could. And when you go down the line, they start labeling them not mestizo, but they change them to white. Or in other cases, other family members that were mixed, these groups were mulatto, and they were kept as mulatto. And then when they mixed and met up with my grandmother was considered de color, or colored. And another term that they use is pardo, Pardo, which means mix. It could be Native American, African, a whole mixture. They call it, when they really could not pinpoint what it was, they sometimes use that term also, pardo. So what happens when we mix a Spaniard with a Morisco? Do we see European designation? Actually, no. They call them a Chino. And what's unusual is a Chino is actually the Asian Chinese. So, but I don't think they were purposely trying to associate these individuals that were mixed with the Chinese population. But it was a term used. I have not seen this term used in the genealogy trees documentation. I think this is more from Mexico and South America. Actually, in Puerto Rico, you will either a white, black, or colored. And sometimes rarely you would see mestizo, and you would see mulatto also, or pardo. And then I just go into more specific, the different classes. The Salta Atras, that's pretty almost offensive to use. They're saying jump backwards. So who were the jump backwards and who were the wolves? That was the term they used to have when a Chino, which is a Morisco that was mixed with a European, mixes with a full-blooded Indian. Full-blooded Indian and a Chino, you get a salta atrás, means jump backwards. And when this salta atrás would mix with a mulata, which is someone who's half white and half black, you get what's called a lobo, or wolf, if you will. I thought that was interesting, and also it's almost offensive to be called a backward jump. Here is a list, and this is my source down here, of the different, who the parents, where they were from, who they mixed with, and what their offspring or children would be considered. And this is more the parents, where they're from, who they mix with, and these are the children. I'm gonna just let you look it up, and if you want to pause the video and to look at it further, feel free to do so now, and we're gonna move on. Now, I put in the Gibaros because in Puerto Rico we use the term, and it actually means something different, and it has changed. But according to this racial caste system, when you get a Lobo and a China to have a child, you would have a Jibaro. And then when the Jibaro with the mulata will mix, you would get albarazado. I really don't know what that means, and I'm sure there's a root word to that, but when you get the albarazado with the negra, you get carobujo. And carobujos, when they mix with the Indians, were Sambaigo. I'm sorry. That's a little hard to see for me. And then here are the culmination of the other classes. So you have the Calpa Mulato over here, Calpa Mulato. You have the Tente en Libre, and I'm sorry, Tente en el Aire, which means Tente, I'm not sure what, forgive my Spanish, but en el aire means in the air. And then there's when Tente en el aire mixes with a mulata, you get no te entiendo, I don't understand you, which is quite, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. I guess the Spanish were trying to play with the words and saying that they won't understand them. And then the no te entiendo, when they mix with an Indian, they come, the term they used was a torna atrás, which is like turn around, which is interesting. Moving along, just summarize everything. Here are the classes. We have the Peninsulares on the top, which are people actually from Spain. We have then the Criollos, which are Spanish descent, 100% Spaniard, but were born in the Americas. And then we have the Mestizos and Mulatos, which are mixed, have some Spanish blood, mixed with Indian, mixed with African, and then you have the full-blooded Indians and Africans on the bottom. Now, this PowerPoint slide was made very simplistic. This is not a exhaustive discussion on the mixing of the classes. This was just to help those who don't understand the terms, and it's an introduction, and I'm sure you could do more research online and find out more. I just thought it was something that may help some individuals, that when they encounter birth records and they see the different categories, that they might be aware of it. Okay. Well, thank you for watching, and here are our social media. And this is our website. We have a Facebook page where we share information, and we do a monthly raffle and give away a Ancestry DNA kit. And here's our private group where we actually go more into detail and have discussions and share information. But it's private. You just go to this link and you just request to join, and one of the moderators will approve you. Then we have our YouTube channel. Please come and subscribe and watch some of the videos. We would greatly appreciate it. And also, finally, our Twitter account. Thank you, and I hope you are able to use this information and can help you with your genealogical research. Have a good day.